It's been nearly 8 months since the start of the MLS regular season, and you know what that means. The Major League Soccer playoffs are finally upon us. 18 teams begin this postseason campaign, but only one will lift the MLS Cup in December. I'm Josh Armour, joined by Owen Cameros and Nico Rodriguez, and this is Penn State Sports Night. Tonight, we'll be predicting this year's winners and losers for the tournament. First question. Owen, I'll start with you. Who do you think will be this year's biggest surprises in the playoffs?
Yeah, Josh, so biggest surprise, I have the Houston Dynamo. I really like the Dynamo, and the reason I quite like them is because teams that do well in the playoffs of in MLS Cup start out red hot, and they come into the MLS Cup red hot, and that's what the Dynamo have done. They beat Inter Miami to win the US Open Cup. Since Leagues Cup, which was about 2.5 months ago, they have lost one game. They've lost one game in about 13. I think their record's 8-1-4. I'm not positive about that, but they are like one of the most dynamic, incredible teams coming in. They're really well coached, and I think the thing with the Dynamo is they have quite an easy schedule coming into the playoffs. They first have to play RSL. That'll be at home. Then they go into St. Louis. And St. Louis, they're first in the West. They're not that great. St. Louis they've struggled as of recently, so I seriously think the Dynamo could make a pretty deep run in this MLS Cup.
Interesting. Nico, what is your take?
One of the teams that I think is going to be the most surprising in this playoffs is going to be the Columbus Crew. They were one of the most overlooked teams in the East throughout the whole year, and they're a great team in terms of offensive possession. They have a leading 57.3% rate in offensive possessions. And on top of that, they open with a really first easy match of Atlanta, and they have a really bad defense, so I think Columbus is going to be able to get it done right away early round one.
Interesting. Both teams that secretly no one really wants to match up against. All right, moving on to the next question. Nico, what team do you think will be the biggest disappointment in the postseason?
The team that I think is going to be the biggest disappointment this year is going to be the Philadelphia Union. To start off, they're a really bad team on the road. They went 5-8-4 this past season on the road, which is obviously not very good. On top of that, they do not have the stars and the power that they did last year when they made the MLS final. And on top of that, they were plagued with the injury bug all year long, so they're going in battered and wounded as a playoff team, which is never what you want.
Interesting. Owen?
Yeah, I'm going to talk about St. Louis. I think St. Louis, they're first in the West, had a great season, but they have a lot of question marks. Obviously, first year in MLS, so already credit to what they've been able to do. You know, winning the West with beating out teams like Seattle and LAFC. But I think the thing with St. Louis is just that they have star players that are playing way better than they should. Sam Adeniran, who was a Seattle Sounders outcast, has like 8 goals this season and has been playing incredibly. And then the other thing with St. Louis is just that they have not finished games well in the past about 5 or 6 games. They recently, on decision day, lost to Seattle 2-0 in St. Louis, which is just not what you want to do going into the playoffs. And the worst thing with St. Louis is I get they're a new team, but there's teams in the West that they have not been able to beat yet. There are teams, unfortunately, it's Seattle and LAFC, who they can't seem to beat. St. Louis just can't seem to beat them. And if they win their first matchup, they will probably play a Seattle or a LAFC in the Western Conference Championship, and it's just scary. You know, you see a team like Seattle, and it's just, if you're not matching up well against them in the regular season, do you think you're going to match up well in the playoffs?
Yeah, interesting. St. Louis, not really great momentum going into the playoffs, like you said, and Union just not on the same level of play as they were last year. But moving on to the last but biggest question, Owen, which team do you think will come out on top playing the final match of the season to lift the MLS Cup?
Yeah, so my finals matchup is going to be Seattle and FC Cincinnati, and I think Cincinnati will win. Cincinnati has one of the best spines in the MLS, meaning that they're, defensively, Matt Miazga, he is in contention, has a decent chance to win MLS Defender of the Year. They have the runaway MLS favorite in the midfield, Lucho Acosta. MLS MVP favorite, Lucho Acosta, who's just absolutely incredible. And the thing with Cincinnati is they have experience. They've played in a bunch of knockout games, playing in CONCACAF Champions League, playing in Leagues Cup, where they made it decently far, playing in the US Open Cup. And experience wins games in the playoffs, and Cincinnati and Seattle both have a ton of that. Seattle, they have finally figured out what to do with Albert Rusnak and Nico Ladero. They've relegated Nico Ladero to the bench, which is kind of where he probably should be as a 35-year-old. And they've used Albert Rusnak incredibly well. He's found his form. He's scoring goals against St. Louis on decision day. And then they're just going to get healthy. Raul Ruidiaz will probably come back, and he's a playoff killer. Christian Roldan came back from injury, and he's looked incredible. Jordan Morris looks incredible. They just have a ton of experience. And I just think after last year where they didn't look like a very good team, I think that Seattle will be able to probably run the table in the West.
All right, Nico, what are your thoughts?
I'm going to go with the LAFC versus FC Cincinnati. So with LAFC, they were the team that won last year. They were the best team in the MLS. They won it all last year. And right now, they still do have a really good attack with leading goal scorer Dennis Bouanga, who scored 20 times this year. And on top of that, they have a ton of playoff experience, ton of postseason experience, ton of veterans on that roster. And then you flip it over to FC Cincinnati. They are now the LA team from last year. They were the best team this year. They have a first-round bye. They have the MVP to be Lucho Acosta. And on top of that, they led the MLS in every single stat category. So they were dominant all year long. So I think Cincinnati wins it.
I agree. Can't go wrong picking FC Cincinnati, the favorites to win the title. But with that being said, we heard some fantastic predictions tonight. But this is the MLS where anything can happen. So tune into the MLS Playoffs starting October 25th to see who will be crowned kings of Major League Soccer. I'm Josh Armour, joined by Owen Cameros and Nico Rodriguez. And thank you for watching Penn State Sports Night's coverage of the MLS Playoffs.
Hey everybody, thanks for tuning into this edition of Penn State Sports Night.
For more content like this, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, give us a like, and follow our socials down below.
And as always, we are
Penn State Sports Night.